You ever walked into a room and felt something shift, like a sudden wave of peace, or a strange tension? That's not just in your head. Some people carry an energy so rare, so powerful, that it can silence chaos without saying a word. These are the true empaths, the ones who don't just feel, they glow. But here's the twist, the very thing that makes them magnetic also makes them dangerous. Not to good people, but to narcissists. Because narcissists don't shine. They reflect. They copy. They feed off light they don't possess. And when they meet someone who carries the real thing, it exposes everything they've tried to hide. In this video, we're going deep into the rare aura empaths carry, why it can't be faked, why it scares manipulators, and how it sets them apart in a world full of empty reflections. You'll never look at energy the same way again. So stay till the end, because the last point might just explain your entire life. If this speaks to your soul, don't just scroll. Drop a comment. Let's talk energy. And if you're one of the rare ones, hit that subscribe. This space was made for you. The light true empaths carry isn't ordinary, and it never has been. You can't see it with your eyes, but you can feel it. It's that invisible warmth that settles a chaotic room. It's the calm in their presence that makes people breathe easier without even realizing why. It's not just emotional sensitivity or being in touch with feelings. It's something deeper. It's a frequency, a spiritual vibration that radiates from the core of who they are. This kind of light can't be taught, borrowed, or copied. It's not polished or performative. It's not loud, dramatic, or attention-seeking. It just is. It lives in them, even when they are quiet, even when they are hurt, even when they are healing. That's why people are drawn to them. Not because they are trying to impress anyone, but because their energy speaks louder than words. It calls out to others who are lost, struggling, or unsure. And without saying much, empaths create a sense of home. People feel safe around them. They feel seen, really seen, for the first time. But this rare light, it doesn't just attract those who need healing. It also draws in the ones who want to control it. And that's where the story takes a darker turn. Narcissists are masters of illusion. They are skilled at mimicking light without ever producing it. They study people. They mirror emotions. They charm. They wear masks so convincing that many never see what's underneath, until it's too late. But there's one thing they can't fake. The frequency of a true empath. That's what exposes them. See, narcissists reflect light, but empaths generate it. One is hollow, feeding off others to feel full. The other is overflowing, pouring from a well that never seems to run dry, even when life gets hard. This difference threatens the narcissist, because the empath's presence alone begins to unravel their act. Empaths don't need to call someone out. They don't need to prove who's right or wrong. Their quiet, calm energy begins to reveal what's real. And narcissists can't stand to be seen without their mask. So what do? They target the empath. They try to dim that light, distort it, drain it. Not because the empath is weak, but because they are powerful in a way the narcissist will never understand. It's not a fair fight, not at first. Because empaths often give the benefit of the doubt. They believe in healing, in second chances. They try to see the good, even when it's buried deep. And in that effort, they sometimes forget themselves. But here's the beauty. The light doesn't go out. It flickers. It fades. It hides. But it never disappears. And eventually, the empath remembers. They reconnect to that inner source. That unshakable knowing that they are here for more than just survival. They weren't made to be someone's emotional punching bag. They weren't made to carry everyone else's pain and forget their own. They were made to awaken, to feel deeply, yes, but also to rise. And when they do, everything changes. Empaths begin to recognize their own frequency. They stop confusing intensity with intimacy. They stop accepting crumbs and calling it love. They stop doubting what they feel and start trusting it like a compass. They begin to sense, almost instantly, who's genuine and who's performing. The narcissist's charm no longer works. The fake smiles, the guilt trips, the gaslighting, it all falls flat. Because the empath isn't playing the same game anymore. Their light has become sharper, clearer, and more grounded. What's even more powerful is this. The empath's presence begins to affect others. Not just the toxic ones, but the ones who are ready to heal. Because light is contagious. When one person stands in truth, it gives others permission to do the same. The empath becomes a mirror, not of illusions, but of potential. They don't try to fix people anymore. They reflect what's possible. They hold space for growth. They speak truth, not to hurt, but to awaken. And this is where their aura becomes truly untouchable. This is why narcissists either flee or escalate when faced with a fully awakened empath. Because they can't manipulate what they can't confuse. They can't control what stands in truth. And deep down, they know it. That's why they are threatened. That's why they lash out, or try to flip the narrative. But it doesn't work, not anymore. Because the empath no longer plays small. They no longer apologize for shining. They no longer carry what was never theirs to hold. And perhaps the most beautiful part? The empath starts using their light for themselves. Not in a selfish way, but in a sacred one. They set boundaries. They rest. They laugh. They connect to joy, to nature, to their own soul. They pour from a full cup, not one full of guilt or obligation, but one overflowing with self-awareness and peace. And from that place, they truly heal others, not by saving them, but by being who they are. This is the rare aura true empaths carry. It's the kind of presence that changes the atmosphere. It's the reason strangers open up to them. It's why animals are drawn to them, why children trust them, and why manipulators fear them. It's not something you can teach in a course. It's not something you can manufacture with affirmations or surface-level healing. It's spiritual. It's cellular. It's earned through soul wounds, through rising again and again when life tried to crush them. And this is what the narcissists will never understand. Because no matter how well they perform, no matter how much they copy emotions, or hijack language, or play the victim, there's one thing they can't create. Soul. They may reflect the surface, but they'll never carry the depth. What narcissists reflect is just a mask, a carefully constructed illusion built to survive, not to connect. Unlike empaths, who shine from something deeply rooted and genuine within, narcissists operate from a place of lack. Their reflection may look confident, even charming on the surface, but behind it is a desperate need to be seen, admired, and validated, without ever truly being known. It's all performance. They study people, learn the language of empathy, mimic emotions, and wear expressions that look like love, concern, or confidence. But it's hollow. It's not coming from soul or spirit. It's coming from strategy. The narcissist's mask isn't just for the world. It's for themselves too. They wear it to escape their own emptiness, to avoid the deep, painful truth that behind the facade, they don't know who they really are. So they keep reflecting others. They reflect your joy, your kindness, your dreams, until you begin to think it's real. That they're just like you. But they're not. Because where an empath connects to heal, the narcissist connects to extract. What they want isn't connection, it's control. And the moment they feel exposed, the mask shifts. It becomes anger, blame, coldness, or complete silence. Because vulnerability is not safe for them. Authenticity feels like weakness. But the empath, they live in that space of raw, honest truth. That's where their glow comes from embracing their pain, from facing their shadows, from feeling deeply without shutting down. That's why narcissists are both drawn to and terrified of them. Because empaths see through the mask. Not always at first. Sometimes it takes months or even years. But eventually, the illusion cracks. And once it does, the empath can never unsee it. And in that moment, the narcissist's reflection is no longer enough, because the soul always longs for something real, and masks, no matter how beautiful, can never hold the weight of love. Empaths are a threat to narcissists in a way that goes far beyond words or actions. It's energetic, it's spiritual, it's invisible, but undeniable. While most people get tangled in the narcissist's charm, confusion, or emotional manipulation, the empath has an inner radar that can't be turned off. They feel what others miss. They sense when words don't match energy. They notice the tension behind the smile, the silence behind the flattery, the subtle shift in tone that betrays the truth. And that terrifies the narcissist, because narcissists thrive in environments where people doubt themselves, where emotions are pushed down, where red flags are explained away. But empaths, they know things without proof. They can't always explain why they are uneasy, but their body reacts, their spirit stays, their heart sends out signals, and eventually, they listen. That's why narcissists try to silence empaths, twist their reality, or even destroy their confidence. Not because the empath is fragile, but because they are dangerous to the lie. An empath's presence is disarming. They see through manipulation with eyes that don't blink. And even when they fall for it at first, they never stay asleep. Their soul won't let them. They vibrate too high to be controlled for long. Their frequency starts to dissolve the narcissist's false power, just by existing. What narcissists fear most isn't confrontation. It's being seen. Truly seen. And that's what empaths do. Not by force, but by nature. They reflect the truth back without trying. And in doing so, they strip away the narcissist's illusion of control. That's why the empath, once aware of their power, becomes untouchable, not through aggression, but through awareness, through stillness, through a quiet strength that no manipulation can bend. There's a dangerous magnetism that exists between empaths and narcissists, a pull that's not random, not accidental, and certainly not harmless. Many people misunderstand this connection. They assume empaths fall into the trap because they are naive, soft, or weak. But that's not the truth. The truth is, empaths are powerful in a way that narcissists crave, but will never truly understand. The empath's aura carries something sacred: authenticity, compassion, depth, and emotional presence. It's real. It's rare. And to the narcissist, it's like a bright flame in a dark room, irresistible, not because they love the light, but because they want to own it. Empaths don't just hear words, they feel the spaces between them. They don't just offer sympathy, they extend their spirit. They love deeply, without performance. They listen without judgment. They heal without trying. And to a narcissist, who is hollow behind their mask, this energy feels intoxicating. Because the narcissist doesn't live from the soul. They live from survival. They perform emotions, imitate depth, mirror desires, all to gain control. But in the presence of a real empath, they feel something they cannot fake. Something they cannot generate on their own. And that's why they are drawn in so strongly. The narcissist sees the empath as a well, deep, nourishing, always giving. And at first, they will adore that well, praise it, protect it, shower it with attention. But eventually, they'll start drawing from it faster than the empath can replenish. They'll test how much the empath will give, how far they'll bend, how long they'll stay quiet about the red flags they see. And the empath, being loving, hopeful, and deeply invested in potential, often keeps giving. Not because they don't see the manipulation, but because they want to believe in transformation. They want to believe that love can reach the unreachable, that healing is possible, even here. But what they don't always realize at first is that the narcissist isn't looking to heal. They're looking to feed. This is where the magnetism becomes dangerous, because the empath starts to confuse the intensity of the connection with intimacy. They confuse the roller coaster of highs and lows with passion. They take on responsibility for the narcissist's wounds. They start thinking, if I just love them right, they'll change. But love doesn't heal someone who's committed to staying broken. And the more the empath gives, the more the narcissist takes, until the empath begins to lose themselves in the process. And yet, there's something sacred in this unraveling, because empaths don't stay asleep forever. That same intuition that drew them and eventually wakes them up. It might be a moment of stillness after a storm. It might be the 100th lie they can no longer excuse. It might be the growing ache of being unseen and unheard in a relationship that only serves one person. Whatever it is, the empath begins to feel a shift. A knowing, a whisper that says, "This isn't love. This is survival. And I deserve more than this." That's the turning point. The moment the magnetism begins to lose its grip, the empath starts pulling their energy back, not out of anger, but out of sacred self-respect. They stop explaining themselves to someone who only listens to control. They stop pouring from their soul into a cup that has no bottom. They start remembering their own light and realizing that the narcissist was never drawn to them, but to the glow they carried. And they also realize that glow doesn't belong to anyone else. It was never meant to be a source for others to exploit. It was meant to guide, to comfort, to connect, but never to be consumed. As the empath begins to rise, the narcissist reacts with confusion, then anger, because they've lost access to something they believed they owned. They may lash out, play victim, spread lies, or even try to win the empath back with grand gestures. But the awakened empath sees through all of it. The spell is broken. The magnet has lost its power. And where once there was obsession, there's now clarity. The empath understands that their power never came from how much they gave, but from how deeply they felt, how purely they loved, and how bravely they let go. And here's the most important part. The magnetism doesn't disappear. It transforms. Once healed, the empath still attracts people. But now it's different. They attract souls who are aligned, not lost. People who come with wholeness, not hunger. The dangerous magnetism becomes sacred resonance. Because when the empath owns their worth, they stop being a target and start becoming a mirror that only truth can survive in front of. So yes, empaths attract narcissists. But not because they are weak, because they are light. And that light is powerful enough to illuminate the darkest of hearts. But the lesson is this: not every heart wants to be healed. And the most sacred thing an empath can learn is when to walk away and let their light shine elsewhere. The healing energy of a true empath is something that can't be contained, controlled, or explained through logic. It flows naturally from who they are. It's not a performance. It's not a practice. It's simply their presence. You can't always describe it, but you can feel it. When an empath enters a space, something settles. An invisible shift takes place. The room softens. People's walls begin to lower, sometimes without them even realizing it. The empath doesn't need to speak to begin healing others. It happens through eye contact, through stillness, through simply being. That's the rare power they carry. And most of the time, even the empath doesn't realize they are doing it. They just know that people open up to them. Strangers feel safe, and broken hearts seem to breathe easier in their presence. But this energy, as pure as it is, doesn't come without consequences, especially when it reaches those who aren't ready to face the truth. Because while the empath's energy heals what is willing, it also exposes what is hidden, especially in narcissists. See, narcissists go to great lengths to construct a false self, a version of themselves they want the world to see. It's polished, confident, charming, and often admired by those who only look at the surface. But the empath, they don't look with eyes alone. They feel the energy behind the mask. And that's where things get uncomfortable for the narcissist. The empath doesn't even have to say a word. Just being in the same space as someone who vibrates with truth and compassion can begin to unravel the lies others cling to, especially lies the narcissist tells themselves. At first, the narcissist may be enchanted by the empath's light. It feels warm, inviting, even intoxicating. But the closer they get, the more they begin to feel something shift. And it's not always pleasant. Because the empath's energy isn't just comforting. It's clarifying. It starts pulling buried emotions to the surface. It reflects back the emptiness the narcissist has tried to avoid for years. It stays up shame they've never wanted to face. And that's not healing they signed up for. Narcissists don't want to be transformed. They want to be worshipped. But the empath's energy doesn't serve ego. It reveals truth. And for the narcissist, that's threatening. This is why the empath's aura is both magnetic and dangerous to a narcissist. It awakens something raw, something unresolved, something the narcissist would rather keep buried. And when those old wounds begin to rise to the surface, they panic. Not outwardly, not at first, but internally, something shifts. They start to feel exposed, seen, maybe even judged, though the empath never meant to make them feel that way. They start pulling back, lashing out, or trying harder to control the empath. Because the healing presence of an empath doesn't flatter the narcissist's mask, it challenges it. And the mask, no matter how beautiful, starts to crack. This is also why many narcissists become aggressive, manipulative, or even cruel after the honeymoon phase with an empath. They've gotten too close to someone who makes them feel uncomfortable in their own skin. Someone who didn't fall for the facade. Someone who, without saying it, reminded them that what they are showing isn't real. That's not a feeling narcissists tolerate for long. So they try to dim that light. They try to twist the empath's kindness into weakness, their boundaries into betrayal. They want to regain control, to feel powerful again. Because the empath's healing aura has done what few things can, forced the narcissist to look in the mirror. And they don't like what they see. But here's the miracle in all of this. The empath, who may have once questioned their power, begins to see the pattern. They begin to notice how people's shadows come to the surface around them. How truth begins to rise. How emotional walls begin to fall. And they start to understand. The energy isn't just soft, it's strong. It's sacred. It's transformative. It doesn't belong to everyone. It's not meant to be handed out freely to those who only want to take. It's a gift, and with that gift comes discernment. The empath starts to choose differently. They begin to protect their peace, not just offer it. They stop rescuing people who refuse to heal. They stop walking into fires thinking they can soothe the flames. They realize that their healing energy is powerful, and not everyone is ready to receive it with respect. And that's when the empath's true light begins to shine even brighter. Not because they've changed who they are, but because they've remembered who they are. So when people say empaths are soft, or emotional, or too sensitive, they're missing the point. Empaths are alchemists. Their presence stays the invisible. Their silence speaks truth. Their energy exposes pain others try to hide, even from themselves. And in doing so, they offer a kind of healing that can't be contained, controlled, or copied. That's why narcissists fear them. That's why they try to twist their light into something dark. But the empath's power isn't in how loud they are. It's in how honest their energy is. And no mask, no matter how convincing, can survive long in the presence of that kind of truth. Empaths walk through the world with something deeper than sight, sharper than logic, and quieter than words. It's their intuition, a powerful inner compass that doesn't just sense feelings, but sees through facades, hears what isn't being said, and detects the energy behind the smile. This isn't just a gut feeling or a hunch. It's a finely tuned radar, often developed through hardship and heartbreak, that allows empaths to decode silent pain, hidden intentions, and emotional patterns without needing a single word. While others are distracted by appearances or clever words, the empath is already listening to what's beneath it. And this intuitive clarity is exactly what makes them so unsettling to narcissists, because narcissists thrive in illusion, and empaths see right through it. Narcissists are master architects of false realities. They build their worlds on charm, control, and carefully edited versions of themselves. They know how to say all the right things, present the right image, and mirror the desires of others to draw them in. But what they can't do is fool energy. Empaths don't get hypnotized by the script. They feel the tension behind the words. They sense when something's off, even if everything looks perfect on the surface. It may take time to fully understand it, but the empath always feels the truth long before the mask slips. And that quiet knowing becomes a threat. In the beginning, narcissists may mistake the empath's silence for weakness. They assume the empath is falling for the charm, that they are being won over just like everyone else. But what they don't realize is that the empath is observing, not just with their eyes, but with their soul. They are picking up on inconsistencies, energy shifts, subtle manipulations. They may not speak up right away, but they are storing every detail. And eventually, those puzzle pieces begin to form a full picture, one that's very different from the illusion the narcissist is trying to maintain. This is where the empath becomes dangerous to the narcissist, not through confrontation, but through clarity. Empaths don't destroy illusions with anger or accusations. They unravel them with presence, with stillness, with truth that rises without effort. The narcissist's mask, which relies on confusion and misdirection, begins to fall apart in the face of someone who simply knows. That's why the narcissist often reacts with defensiveness, gaslighting, or sudden emotional outbursts, because the illusion is no longer holding. And once an empath sees the truth, they can't unsee it. But here's the twist. The empath often doubts themselves first. They wonder, am I overthinking? Am I being too sensitive? This self-questioning is part of the empath's growth, because their gift of intuition has often been dismissed or invalidated in the past, especially by those who benefited from keeping them confused. Yet, the longer they sit with that inner knowing, the stronger it becomes. Eventually, they stop needing external proof. They stop second-guessing what their body, heart, and spirit have been telling them all along. And that's the moment everything changes. Once an empath learns to trust their intuition, they become immune to manipulation. They no longer wait for the mask to fall. They walk away when the energy feels off. They stop giving the benefit of the doubt when their soul says no. They stop allowing confusion to take root, because they've learned that truth always whispers first, and lies only get louder when they are being exposed. The empath begins to live from this place of clarity. They don't need to argue or convince anyone of what they feel. They simply stand in it, and their stillness speaks louder than any performance. Meanwhile, the narcissist, who once relied on confusion to maintain control, finds themselves disarmed. The usual tactics, love bombing, guilt, silent treatment, projection, they don't work anymore. The empath sees them for what they are, illusions, strategies, not truth. And without someone to confuse, the narcissist loses power. Not because the empath fought harder, but because they stopped playing the game altogether. That's the quiet revolution of an intuitive empath. They don't destroy people. They destroy illusions. They don't fight with swords. They fight with awareness. They walk through life with the kind of insight that can't be taught, only earned, through pain, through reflection, through rising again and again with their hearts still open. Their intuition isn't just a gift, it's a shield, a mirror, a light in the darkness. And while narcissists build kingdoms on illusion, the empath walks with truth as their crown. So when you wonder why empaths make narcissists so uncomfortable, understand this. It's not just their compassion, their love, or their kindness. It's their clarity. It's the way they sit calmly in a room and feel everything the narcissist is trying to hide. It's the way they quietly dismantle lies with presence alone. It's the way they see what others don't, and still choose to love, to heal, to rise. That kind of power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply knows. And that knowing is something no illusion can survive. Empaths aren't here to fix broken people, though for much of their early journey, many believe that's their mission. They pour love into the wrong hands, offer understanding to the unteachable, and mistake potential for promise. But over time, They learn the painful truth. You cannot heal someone who is committed to their own mask. You cannot love someone out of their delusion if they are addicted to control. And you certainly cannot save a narcissist whose survival depends on never being truly seen. See, what empaths often confuse as their responsibility is actually their gift. Their presence alone activates something in others. A spark, a mirror, a moment of deep recognition. But that activation isn't meant to rescue. It's meant to awaken. It's not about bending over backward to accommodate dysfunction. It's about being so rooted in your own frequency that others either rise to meet it or fall away. The danger lies in the fact that empaths, by nature, attract the wounded. Not because they are broken, but because they shine. Their energy is pure, unfiltered, and soft, but it also burns through lies, projections, and emotional masks. This is why narcissists gravitate toward them. Not to love them, not to understand them, but to feed on the very light that exposes their emptiness. A narcissist's false self can't survive long in the presence of truth, so they try to twist it. They pull the empath into a cycle of confusion, flattery, blame, and guilt. They play the victim, then the hero, then the judge, all in an attempt to make the empath doubt what they feel. Because once the empath wakes up to their role, not as fixer, but as awakener, they become dangerous to the narcissist's game. True empaths don't absorb pain because they are weak. They absorb it because they see it. They know when someone is hiding sorrow behind anger, or self-loathing behind arrogance. But that seeing doesn't come with a responsibility to carry what isn't theirs. Healing begins when the empath steps out of the role of the caretaker and into the role of the truth holder. The one who says, I see your pain, but I cannot process it for you. The one who says, I see your potential, but I won't drown in your chaos waiting for you to honor it. This is the shift from codependency to sacred witnessing. And this shift changes everything. When an empath stops trying to fix, something incredible happens. They gain clarity. They gain power. They stop attracting lessons in disguise and start attracting aligned souls. People who aren't looking for a savior, but a mirror. People who want to grow, not manipulate. People who are ready to face their own shadows, not project them onto someone else. The empath no longer becomes a sponge for emotional pain. They become a lighthouse for conscious connection. Their energy, still deeply healing, now invites transformation without demanding sacrifice. And those who are unwilling to do their inner work, they fall away, fast. Narcissists especially cannot survive in this awakened energy, because their power relies on emotional chaos, on confusion, on keeping their partner focused on them at all times. But the moment the empath stops spinning in their storm, the storm loses force. The narcissist's tactics become obvious. Their words lose impact. Their games become exhausting to maintain. And eventually, the narcissist either lashes out in one last attempt to regain control, or they vanish altogether, unable to dominate someone who has remembered who they are. Empaths were never meant to live in the shadows of others. They weren't created to be emotional support systems for the emotionally unavailable. They were born to carry light into dark places, not to stay there, but to illuminate them and move on. To awaken, not to fix. To witness, not to rescue. And once they understand this, the cycle breaks. The trauma bond shatters. The guilt fades. And what's left is a soul that's still soft, but no longer fragile. Still loving, but now wise. Still compassionate, but finally protected. It's a powerful thing when an empath awakens. It means no more trying to save people who like their pain. No more mistaking intensity for intimacy. No more giving endless chances to someone who only sees you as a supply. It's not cruelty. It's clarity. And clarity is love in its highest form. Because when you honor your own energy, you give others permission to rise into theirs. That's what empaths were born to do. Not to fix, but to remind. To spark something sacred in those who are ready. To reflect what's real. To hold space for truth. and to walk away, when necessary, without apology. You can feel it before they even speak. A calmness that washes over the room. A clarity that cuts through the noise. A kind of quiet, grounding presence that seems to settle everything inside you, even if just for a moment. This is the aura of a true empath. And what's remarkable is, it doesn't come from effort. It's not something they try to project. It simply is. It radiates from who they are at the deepest level. It's a kind of energetic truth that speaks louder than words ever could. You don't have to know their story to feel it. You don't need an explanation. You know when you're in the presence of someone who carries this ray frequency. It's like walking into sunlight after days of cold shadow. But what makes this aura so powerful is not just its beauty. It's what it disrupts. You see, narcissists move through the world wearing masks, pretending to be warm, wise, or charming. But when they come near an empath, something starts to crack. Because next to that silent, authentic glow, their artificial light fades. Their rehearsed charm feels flat. Their games feel obvious. And they can feel it too. The unease, the exposure, the fear. Because deep down, narcissists know what they lack: realness. And no matter how well they perform, they can't fake an aura that was never theirs to begin with. That's why an empath's silence can be louder than a narcissist's rage. That's why they feel threatened even when you haven't said a word. Because your presence alone becomes a mirror. And in that mirror, they don't see love. They see lack. The empath's aura reflects truth, while the narcissist reflects a lie. And when the two stand in the same space, the contrast is impossible to ignore. They never enter a room to be seen, yet somehow, all eyes eventually find them. Not because they are loud, not because they demand anything, but because their presence commands attention in a way that can't be explained, only felt. That's the paradox of a true empath. They don't chase applause, don't perform for approval, don't compete to shine brighter. Their light isn't artificial, it's quiet, ancient, and real. The kind that doesn't flicker under pressure. The kind that doesn't need validation to exist. It just is. And that's what makes it so powerful. While the narcissist scans every room looking for mirrors to reflect their false image back to them, the empath simply exists, unmoved, centered, deeply grounded in truth. They don't need an audience to feel whole. They don't speak to impress, only to connect. They don't wear masks. They don't manipulate light to hide shadow. And yet, they are noticed, deeply, instinctively, by those who are paying attention. To some, their energy feels like peace. To others, especially those who crave control, it feels like disruption. Because you can't manipulate someone who doesn't need your approval. You can't bait someone who doesn't react from ego. And you can't control someone whose power comes from within. Narcissists find this unnerving. They can't understand why their usual tactics, charm, guilt, intimidation, fall flat in the presence of an empath. It's because empaths don't operate on the same frequency. They are tuned into something deeper. They read energy, not image. Intention, not performance. They see behind the mask, without needing to call it out. And that's why narcissists often become obsessed. The empath is like a mystery they can't solve, a soul they can't fully reach, a light they can't dim. The narcissist wants to own what the empath simply is. But here's the thing. Empaths were never meant to be owned. They don't conform, they transform. They don't chase, they attract. And they don't beg to stay in places where their spirit is dimmed. You'll notice something else too. When an empath speaks, people pause, not out of fear or dominance, but because their words carry weight. Not from volume, but from depth. Even their silence speaks volumes. It creates a space that feels safer, calmer, more real. That's presence. That's power. And it's the kind of power that can't be faked with theatrics or forced charisma. It comes from alignment, from living truthfully, from feeling deeply without being consumed. This kind of presence naturally repels the inauthentic. It stays discomfort in those who wear masks for too long. Because an empath's calm can feel threatening to someone who only knows chaos. Their honesty feels confrontational to those who lie to themselves. Their light feels invasive to those who live in shadows. But still, the empath doesn't dim. They don't dilute themselves to fit into broken systems or win temporary favor. Their mission isn't to be liked, it's to be. To live with open eyes and an open heart, even in a world that numbs and distracts. And when they walk away, they don't slam doors. They don't scream for closure. They leave like water slipping through fingers, gracefully, silently, fully. But the impact of their absence is often louder than their presence ever was. Because people remember how they felt around an empath. They remember the calm, the understanding, the space to breathe. And when it's gone, they notice. Especially those who once tried to control them. Because it's only in their absence that the narcissist realizes this presence was never about attention. It was about alignment, about truth, about the rare, unshakable kind of strength that never needed to shout to be heard. So no, empaths don't chase attention. They never needed it. They carry something much deeper, something eternal. Their glow may be subtle, but it's unmissable. And the ones who are meant to find them always do. Because real presence doesn't need an announcement. It leaves a lasting imprint on the soul. When a narcissist encounters a true empath, it shakes them. Not in a surface way, but at the very foundation of their false self. You see, narcissists operate through illusion. Everything they project, the charm, the confidence, the image, is a carefully constructed mask designed to hide the emptiness within. But empaths, they don't need a mask. They radiate from the soul. Their energy is raw, sincere, and rooted in something far deeper than appearance or validation. And that is exactly what makes them threatening to narcissists. Not because empaths try to expose them directly, but because their very existence makes exposure inevitable. Their light is like a mirror the narcissist can't escape. It reflects everything they try to hide. The lies, the manipulation, the hollowness. That's why narcissists don't just feel uncomfortable around empaths. They feel unmasked. And so the game begins. The narcissist will often enter a relationship with the empath full of admiration, even obsession. At first, they'll praise their light. They'll say things like, "You're not like anyone I've ever met," or "You make me feel seen." But what they're really saying is, "I want your light to fill my void." The trouble is, light like that can't be stolen. It can't be absorbed through proximity. And when the narcissist realizes they can't possess it, they try to control it. They'll gaslight the empath, chip away at their confidence, question their intuition, and twist their reality, all to dim that glow they once admired. Not because the empath changed, but because their presence became unbearable to someone living a lie. But here's the part narcissists never expect. When an empath is wounded, their light doesn't go out. It evolves. It deepens. Pain doesn't silence them. It sharpens their intuition. Every attempt to suppress them becomes fuel for their awakening. They may retreat for a while, licking their wounds in solitude, wondering why they always attract such draining energy. But they don't stay down, because true empaths don't need external permission to shine. Their light comes from something internal, something divine. It's soul fire. It survives storms. And once they realize that their glow is not a weakness but a threat to those who can't handle truth, they stop shrinking to protect egos. They stop explaining their worth to people who only seek to exploit it. They stop playing small to keep someone else comfortable. And this is when the narcissist truly panics. Not when the empath is hurting, but when they rise. Because an awakened empath is unstoppable. Their light is no longer naive, it's discerning. Their compassion is no longer blind, it's selective. They begin to see manipulation before it even arrives. They read energy before words are spoken. And more importantly, they no longer feel guilty for walking away. That's the ultimate power shift. Narcissists thrive on control, And when the empath chooses themselves, the narcissist loses access to their fuel source. They are left with their mask, unconvincing and unraveling. But what's even more poetic is this: the empath's light continues to grow. Through the pain, the lessons, the tears, they become a lighthouse for others. They guide those still lost in toxic cycles, not by force, but simply by being who they are. Their healing becomes contagious. Their truth becomes a ripple. And somewhere deep down, the narcissist feels that absence, not of a victim, but of someone who saw them clearly and chose to walk away anyway. You see, narcissists don't target empaths because they are weak. They target them because they are powerful. Because that rare light, so soft, yet so strong, exposes everything false without needing to say a word. And when the narcissist tries to dim that light and fails, they are left with the one thing they fear most: their own reflection. So if you're an empath reading this, and you've been made to feel too sensitive, too intense, too much, understand that what they tried to silence was never your flaw. It was your frequency. Your glow unsettles those who've built their world on lies. Let it. You were never meant to be small. You were meant to awaken rooms just by entering them. And no matter how many times they try to dim your light, remember this: real light doesn't flicker in the presence of darkness. It simply shines louder. There's something powerful about a light that shines without needing permission. That's what true empaths carry. It's not loud, it's not boastful, but it's undeniable. It's the kind of light that enters a room and changes the temperature without saying a word. The kind that softens chaos, brings comfort to the anxious, and makes people feel seen without needing to explain themselves. It's divine, really. A frequency that feels like home to those who've been wandering in emotional deserts for far too long. But here's the thing: what feels like peace to the wounded feels like exposure to the pretender. And narcissists, they don't recognize that light is a blessing. They see it as a threat, because the narcissist's world is built on illusion. It's all mirrors and smoke, all about how things appear, not how they actually are. Their power comes from control, of perception, emotion, truth. They want to be the brightest thing in the room, not because they truly shine, but because they've snuffed out every other flame around them. So when an empath walks in, someone whose light can't be dimmed, someone who isn't trying to compete, someone who just is, it shakes the very foundation of everything the narcissist depends on. They'll feel it instantly. That uncomfortable pressure in the room. Like something isn't bending to their usual tactics. The empath isn't fawning, isn't chasing, isn't reacting the way others do. That alone makes the narcissist itch. Because where they expect attention, they meet calm. Where they push to provoke, they meet stillness. And where they try to lead the dance, they find someone who isn't playing the game at all. That's not just frustrating to the narcissist, it's terrifying. So they do what they've always done. They attempt to control, to confuse, to crush. They start small, subtle jabs, little criticisms dressed up as jokes, gentle nudges that make the empath question themselves. And if that doesn't work, they escalate. Gaslighting, guilt-tripping, smearing, anything to make the empath shrink, anything to plant doubt. Because if they can make the empath feel too much, too emotional, too dramatic, then maybe, just maybe, that light will start to flicker. Maybe it'll dim. Maybe it'll turn inward and question its own worth. That's what the narcissist hopes for. Not because they hate the light itself, but because they hate what it reflects back to them. Everything they are not. But here's where things get interesting. You can't destroy something that was built in truth. You can't unmake what was divinely rooted. And while the empath may stumble, may cry, may doubt, may even break down for a moment, their light isn't powered by ego. It's powered by something deeper. It's been tested by pain, forged in silence, strengthened in the shadows when nobody saw them growing. So even when the narcissist believes they've won, when they've isolated, belittled, confused, and drained the empath, it's only temporary. Because empaths don't stay down. They transform. And when they rise again, they are no longer just glowing, they are blazing. The narcissists can't understand that. They live in a world where power comes from pretending, where strength is measured by who bows down. They don't know what to do with someone who keeps getting brighter the more they are broken. And that's what makes empaths so dangerous to them. They are unmanageable. They are unpredictable. And most of all, they are uncontainable. The irony is that narcissists are often drawn to empaths for the same reasons they end up trying to destroy them. They crave the warmth, the acceptance, the understanding, things they may have never truly received. But instead of growing from it, they try to possess it. And when they realize they can't control that kind of light, they panic. They think, if I can't have it, I'll ruin it. But true empaths aren't ruins. They're rebirths. Every time the narcissist tries to tear them down, they rebuild stronger, wiser, quieter, maybe, but more aware. They stop trying to heal what doesn't want to be healed. They stop explaining themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them. And most importantly, they stop handing their light to those who only show up to dim it. Empaths learn that their glow isn't for everyone, and that's okay. It's not meant to be. Not everyone can handle the truth they carry. Not everyone is ready to be seen without their masks. And not everyone deserves front row access to that kind of soul. So they begin to guard it, not with walls, but with discernment. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because once an empath realizes that they were never too much, they were just in the wrong room, they stop begging for seats at unstable tables. They start building their own. And they only let in those who honor, not harvest, who connect, not compete, who recognize the light, not resent it. Narcissists, in the end, may keep circling, trying to figure out how to recreate what they lost. But imitation has no frequency, and masks don't glow. They only crack. Eventually, the narcissist is left alone with their own reflection, realizing that no matter how many times they tried to steal someone else's light, they still feel empty in the dark. But the empath, they move on, brighter, softer, sharper, not because they need revenge, or recognition, or applause, but because their light was never meant to be hidden. It was meant to shine in truth, walk in love, and be the mirror for those who forgot what real looks like. So when the narcissist tries to dim an empath's light, they are not fighting the person. They are fighting something ancient, something sacred, something that doesn't shrink when it's misunderstood, but expands, something that was never theirs to own in the first place. And in the end, that's what truly terrifies them. Empaths are not just sensitive souls. They are divine restorers, spiritual architects quietly tasked with the most sacred work, rebuilding what narcissists have left in ruins. Where narcissists bring chaos, confusion, and emotional erosion, the empath arrives not with judgment or revenge, but with a soul-deep intention to heal, to restore, to awaken. But this isn't a conscious decision. It's simply who they are. They are wired to sense damage others overlook, to feel pain that's been silenced, and to respond with a depth of compassion that is rarely seen in this world. A narcissist will walk through someone's life and leave behind debris of self-doubt, shattered identity, emotional instability, and psychological wounds that echo for years. But then, without fanfare or applause, an empath steps in. Not always with words, sometimes just with presence, and things begin to change. The empath's energy is grounding. Their gaze is steady,